Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the
Hello.
stream. We're so glad to be here with you working. The stream is working. I hope you hear us. If you can hear us, say so in the comments. We're testing volume, screens, all kinds of things. It's an act of science fiction, if you will. It's a really bad joke, but here we are trying to get the future working on StreamYard. Welcome, everyone. This is a big day. This is the big book of science fiction story club kicking off live in person, in digital person. If you are on this stream, you are here for day one. Today, we are going to talk about sci-fi at large. We're going to talk about the introduction to this book, and we're going to talk about H.G. Wells's The Star, a magnificent piece of science fiction about a star that comes close to Earth, nearly killing everyone. Welcome, everyone. So Sarah and I have been rock and rolling a little bit here the last few weeks, and we've kind of started this new project tentatively dubbed Spec Fic Circle. And the idea here is that together we're reading speculative fiction. On Wednesdays, we've got this story club for the sci-fi book. On Thursdays, we have a horror story club book. If that's your jam, tomorrow, same time, we'll be here. And on Fridays, we do a live flash fiction writing workshop. The Circle: read, write, publish, repeat. This is the vision. We're trying to improve our craft, get ourselves out there. We've got a Discord going. That is part of the community. That should be in the respective links of these videos. And it's just a big time. I'm so excited. I'm just sort of awed by this intro, by the potential of science fiction. I know we have a lot of science fiction writers out there in the mix. B, what's up? You made it. Hi. Rune is here. Takashi gives us the thumbs up on the loud and clear. This is great. Just in terms of ourselves, my name's Asa Merritt. I wrote a series for Audible called 6 Sermons, starring Stephanie Hsu. That project is scripted, and now I'm writing fiction. That's why I started a YouTube channel. Sarah and I go back. Sarah, I'm going to pass it to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and just give us a little more context about this story we're going to talk about today?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, we've got Coyote Raven, Narrative Vault. Hello, Tim is here. Hello, everyone. Yeah, let us know in the chat here, either whether you're on Twitch or you're on YouTube watching us. Let us know where you're coming in from today. If you want to, lurking is extremely accepted as well, since we're all a little bit introverted here. Oh, wonderful. Watch the replay. Yes, the replay will be available on both of our YouTube channels. So yeah, super excited to see you all here. My name is Sarah Ray Werner. Like Asa said, I am also a writer, podcaster, producer, speaker. I don't know. I do a lot of things. Good. We've got a lot of folks telling us we're coming in loud and clear. Thank you for that. Yeah, basically I left my day job, almost 9 years ago now, to write for myself and to podcast and to really live a creative life on my own terms. And we can talk more about that as we go throughout this series, if that's something that you're interested in doing. I am talking way too long, but today I'd like to, introduce you to The Star. So Asa has explained this before, but basically what our SpecFix Story Club is doing, hello Lore, is we are going through this beautiful big book of science fiction. You can see it's huge. It's chunky. But Ann and Jeff Vandermeer, of Annihilation fame, have put together this anthology. 2016 it was published, so it's not even that old. It's pretty new. And we're going to be going through it one story at a time here on Wednesdays. And then Thursdays, we've got, I have it right here. It's sort of like the big book of science fiction, but it's the big book of horror called The Dark Descent. And so join us Thursday for these stories. Okay, I felt like I needed to say all that, even though Asa also has said that already.
No, you did.
So,
this is a big moment.
okay.
We're starting something, saying it out loud, makes it real, and it's real,
I love it. I love it. And Asa, it looks like I do not have the ability to highlight comments. So if you see any comments you'd like to highlight, I will make that your job.
This is a relevant comment. Rune says, leaving the day job to create your passions. And that's the dream for real. I mean, isn't it? Yes, and Sarah really has created a really inspiring life for herself. So in the course of this series, maybe we'll get into that. Yes, everyone's here, and I will continue, Sarah, to highlight the relevant comments.
You're so good. Thank you.
Sure. And yes, just one final thought. There's ongoing conversation about these stories in the Discord. If you can't make the streams or afterwards, you say, I totally disagree, and you didn't highlight my comment, then, the Discord, it's all like a great conversation. There's like a spoiler-free area. Anyway, there's depth happening over there. Cody, the writer, is here. Welcome, Cody. Welcome.
Hey, gosh, I'm so excited to see all of you here. So this anthology that we're talking about, from which we are reading our first story today, it gives us also, it's basically a textbook. So it gives you a little information on the writer as well. And we might dip into that a little bit during our conversation. But basically, I'm going to just go through and do a quick summary of today's short story, The Star by H.G. Wells. This is free and available to read out on Project Gutenberg. There might be a link in our Discord and maybe in the chat here on my side of things. And I kind of am tempted to do like a story hour thing, but I won't do that because I'm not reading the whole story to you.
I'm feeling story hour vibes. I'm getting the vibe.
It's interesting. So the way that this story, and it's actually a very simple story. There's not a lot of plot points. It is just one simple progression. It is start of story and then just inevitable conclusion. Like it's not twists and turns. It's not any of that. This is just a if then, F around and find out kind of plot. And so right at the beginning, let's see. How deep do I want to get into this? Basically, there is something coming toward the Earth. And it's this bright light. It's getting near to Neptune. It's throwing Neptune off of its orbit. And the science community is like, we're freaking out. And basically, this story goes through what the scientific community does with that information, which is freak out amongst themselves. Word doesn't really get out to the public that there's this giant, scary thing coming toward the Earth. But people will soon feel its effects. So they call it's very interesting too, because it takes place on the first day of the new year. And it has a lot of imagery, which I think we'll probably get into. So I won't spoil all that here. But basically, this thing gets nearer and bigger in the sky. They wonder at some point, oh, is it going to crash into us? They speculate that, oh, it's very beautiful, but also very terrifying. And then it basically goes through the new planet and Neptune, locked in a fiery embrace, were whirling headlong ever faster and faster toward the sun. And what this is doing is it's throwing off the orbit of, at this time, there were 8 planets. Then we moved to having 9 planets, and then we got rid of Pluto. So we're back at 8 planets again. So this is Neptune, the final planet at the time and currently. So basically, it goes through the nightmare of what would happen physiologically to the Earth if this were to happen. It goes through volcanoes. There is flooding. There are storms. There are, quote, millions of sleepless people staring in helpless terror at the incandescent sky. So a lot of that. And maybe there are some echoes here with War of the Worlds, with impending doom, with impending destruction. And basically what happens is there's an eclipse. So the moon comes between this quote unquote new star, this phenomenon, and it passes and people realize, oh my gosh, we're not going to get obliterated. The star passes. And yes, makes me want to reread War of the Worlds, says Rune. And it's so interesting because there's all this destruction and devastation. And what happens is people clean up and they go back to their lives, essentially. And it talks about the new brotherhood that grew presently among men. People came together to like save books, to save knowledge, to save, whatever it is they deemed important culturally. and they kind of then just move on with their lives. And then we come to a little bit of a twist. And Asa, am I neglecting anything before that?
No, no, I think you that's all so on. Carry
Okay.
on. Carry
Okay,
on.
perfect. Good.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to spoil this, what, 100-year-old story? Almost
I
100-year-old
mean, that's what
story?
we're here for. Let's hear
All
it.
right. So, this is when the twist comes. And you can see I'm holding it up here. It is right here. So, this is the end of the story. This is the twist. So, it's literally the last few sentences here. And it's like, yay, hooray, there's people. The earth is hotter, but that's fine. We'll deal with that, they said. And then here comes the twist. The Martian astronomers, for there are astronomers on Mars, although they are very different beings from men, were naturally profoundly very interested by these things. They saw them from their own standpoint, of course. And I'm just going to read this last little part because I think this is really the linchpin of the story. So, this is what the Martians are saying. It is astonishing what a little damage to the Earth, which it missed so narrowly, has sustained. All the familiar continental markings and the masses of the seas remain intact. And indeed, the only difference seems to be a shrinkage of the white discoloration supposed to be frozen water around either pole, which only shows how small the vastness of human catastrophes may seem at a distance of a few million miles. And that's how the story ends. So I have a lot of thoughts. But Asa, how did this first impact you when you read it?
Oh gosh. I mean, it just, as a relatively new-ish consumer of science fiction, I mean, of course, like everyone, it enters your slipstream, but this is the first time I've really hit this genre in earnest. Like the first thought I had at the end is like, is science fiction the future? Is it what I needed to read? This. I think for anyone who struggles with the state of the world, there's so much of a tradition in science fiction of presenting an alternative future,
Mm.
or which I think this piece really does, is like, even if all your fears come true, at some level, it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's everything goes awry. So the volcanoes explode, like the glaciers melt, there's floods, most people die. And it feels a little bit uncanny because the destruction wrought by the star in some ways kind of is really easy to imagine given the kind of destruction we get from climate change in a compressed scale. But for me, the sort of like that twist, the turn at the end, the kind of final idea that like, it wasn't all that bad or it wasn't all that crazy. It just puts everything in context, right? And I guess for me, there is like a real, almost like sort of spiritual appeal to this kind of conclusion where it's like, no matter how big and bad, like the worst that can happen is that all people die, right? At some level, because it's still, no matter how big and bad it is, like a speck in this cosmos, And that's exactly what these Martian scientists, contextualize. It's like this thing that literally the world ended and all these people saw the sky turn white and their lives flash before their eyes. It's like, if you go on a long enough timeline, it's just another thing that happened. And I guess for me, that was kind of a big takeaway of reading this, and how I, at least for myself, like can look at the present and it's just like, this is so bad. This is the worst it's ever been. It's the end of days, and it's like so often people have felt that way.
Mm.
And, I don't know. It was powerful for me that this was a 100-year-old story. Here is a comment from Takashi.
Mm.
This story feels like the stepping stones of cosmic horror. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And go ahead.
This is so good because one of the things I think that we're gonna end up talking about in Story Club. So we're doing different days: Wednesday for sci-fi, Thursday for horror. I think what we're gonna see is a lot of overlap. I think just from how speculative fiction works and how each of these, we'll talk about this maybe too, how each of these subgenres has grown. A lot of them have grown out of similar places. A lot of them are overlaying each other and dovetailing. And honestly, there are so many elements of horror in science fiction, and there are often sci-fi aspects to are often sci-fi aspects to a lot of the horror stories we read. And one thing I'm going to point out real quick, the beginning of this book, and it is okay if you do not have this book, it is large and unwieldy, is there's an introduction that talks about, what really is science fiction. And basically it comes down to, it deals with the future. And like that is ripe for overlay with horror, with cosmic horror, like Takashi said. And in the horror anthology, in the introduction to this, it defined horror as basically something with a specific atmosphere. And so there is just those definitions are so vague. We have future dealing and atmospheric feeling. That I think that we're going to get a lot of overlap. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. I have gotten us completely off topic.
Oh, it's all on topic. It's all on topic.
But yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was going to go back to what you were saying about perspective and feeling safe and gaining perspective, unless you would like to take us elsewhere.
I mean, that's at the core of what, if the sky falls down tonight, I'll be glad that we talked about that instead of what I'm about to talk, so let's hear it.
Okay. It reminded me to a lot of, was it Neil deGrasse Tyson? It was a astrophysicist who first talked about the little blue dot. And I want to say this first started in the 70s. And yeah, Rune says it's so easy to go off on a tangent with this material. It really is. I will talk all day and I promise I won't do that. But there is this perspective shift. I want to say it was in the 70s. I should have researched this beforehand and I didn't. Carl Sagan, thank you. Coyote Raven says Carl Sagan. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you. Carl Sagan pointed out that, hey, now that we have pictures of space and we're not looking at everything from our perspective, like we assume is happening in the very beginning of The Star by H.G. Wells, we're looking at it from an Earth human perspective, is that we are very small and cosmically speaking, very insignificant. And there's such a duality there of feeling, oh, I don't really matter. We're just on this little blue dot and it's over here and we're just flying around with all these other blue dots, less blue maybe, dots of other colors, representing different atmospheres. But there's that side where you could feel really insignificant. But like what Asa was talking about is there's this larger, grander relief, I think. And I think this is what you're talking about. People suddenly were like, oh, everything doesn't hinge on me, the center of the universe, because I'm not the center of the universe. And it just gives us a little bit of perspective. It gives us a little bit of grace with what we're dealing with here. So,
Definitely.
But I was very much reminded of the little blue dot. And again, thank you for telling me that that's Carl Sagan.
Yeah,
I was about to misattribute it.
Coyote Raven, well done. Sagan pulling that off the dome. Absolutely. And I think we're going to see this in the horror anthology as well, as in the awe, in the spectacular, in the improbable, in the impossible, there is a degree of kind of catharsis that makes the present tolerable and tenable. I want to get more into some specific literary stuff happening in the story. But before having that, I just want to share my kind of favorite little takes of the intro. The intro is really great, folks. Once you get your copy, Jeff and Ann, they very piercingly kind of do away with that oft said dichotomy of genre fiction and literary fiction. And, I know we have a lot of speculative fiction writers here in the mix. And, I'm sort of trying that hat on, oh, I'm a speculative fiction writer myself. And, there's this constant kind of, oh, are you a genre writer? Are you a literary writer? And, I think generally speaking, that's all kind of not that useful of a conversation. Genre is useful for readers to find writers. It is a marketing tool. But I love the way that was articulated here. And so that's just something I wanted to share. From the jump, they're let's just not even worry about that. If it takes place in space, it's on the table, in the future, rather, as you said. If it's in the future, it's on the table. And so for me, especially, we're entering this year of weekly stories of genre fiction, just kind of letting go of that feels very exciting, Yeah.
Oh, it does. It does. And it's also a little bit of letting go of the trappings of the genre. Also, sort of distancing ourselves from the reputations of these genres a little bit. I know that in both of the introductions to both these anthologies, historically, horror and sci-fi have been looked down upon by the more literary side of literature. Can I say that? Is that redundant? And there's a real snobbery, and there shouldn't be, because, you know, all fiction has important things to say in different ways. There's a reason these genres have grown up differently. It's because different people want different things. And so I really appreciate them talking about, like, oh, the reason that this is seen as low art or looked down on was because it grew out of pulp fiction. And that's what the lower classes read. That's what children read. And it's this whole, I don't know, hierarchy, I guess, of who's the best in fiction. And then when I'm going to say something facetiously, okay? When women came along, that was my facetious statement. When women suddenly came along and wanted to write science fiction, even though they were arguably writing it the whole time, there was that discussion again of who is allowed to be in science fiction. What does it mean? So not only is science fiction sort of seen as lesser by the larger literary community, but suddenly within science fiction, now it's, oh, you're not allowed to write science fiction because you're a woman. You're not allowed because you don't understand the lasers and explosions the way that I do. And so there's a lot going on here with gender. And yes, oh, I love that, Cody. Yes, Cody, I want to highlight, in the words of Brian Sanderson, everyone should write. It makes us well-rounded, more understanding humans. It does. Helps us develop empathy. It's so important. Oh, yes. Yes. And Takashi's getting us back into the discussion about the story, which I appreciate, because I could talk about intersectionality in science fiction and horror all day long, which you don't want me to do. So, okay, I'm going to kick things back over to Asa.
Let me just read this comment out loud. Let's see. Okay,
yeah.
So one of the biggest strengths of this story is how it presents the realm of probability and sets the tone on the first paragraph. It sets why we should care about the star. Okay, so Takashi, let me know if I'm understanding you correctly. Like, the idea is that the initial handshake of the story is one sort of squarely within the realm of science. I think that's what you mean. Am I like? Let me know if that's what you mean.
And I can read this first sentence too, real quick.
Yeah, let's hear the first sentence.
So that first sentence: it was on the first day of the new year that the announcement was made, almost simultaneously from 3 observatories, that the motion of the planet Neptune, the outermost of all the planets that wheel about the sun, had become very erratic.
Yes, right. Yes, that is. It's almost like a newspaper sentence in some ways.
Yes, it is.
You know?
Oh, it is.
So I think that's a great observation, Takashi. And like in the sort of schools of sci-fi, like as we continue through this book, I think we're gonna sort of the hard science fiction versus the more romantic science fiction. And I think, yes, this is definitely starting from a hard step, you know, at the very least. One thing that I don't know if B is still on here. So B is a writer, B Hawthorne, mentioned in the Discord, because they said that they weren't able to stay the whole time. This is really in the weeds, but it really stuck out to me as insightful. So B pointed out a pace decision that happened with the introduction of the mathematician. So for those who haven't read the story, the way this unfolds is like the star comes into play. The story exists in kind of a macro. Here's a star. Here's these things that are happening. And then the camera of the story like goes into this office where this like mathematician is at his desk, observing the star, like scribbling away, identifying conclusions. And then we stay with the mathematician for, I don't know, several hundred words. And only then do we launch into kind of, then after that does the story start hurtling towards its like final motion. And B in the Discord pointed out, and I don't have that comment pulled up in front of me, but basically how that living in this like slower storytelling moment with the mathematician, after having started like, folks, there's a star coming to Earth and this is the big deal. And it's like, okay, let's just like take a step into office hours here and like talk about the paper, you know, did this like really kind of like worked. For them, it really like worked. And I just thought that was like I think that instinct to observe that part of the story is really interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know. Any takes there, Sarah?
Oh, I have many takes. I thought it was a very interesting choice. So as I was reading this, this was my first time reading this story. And I actually have not read a whole lot of H.G. Wells, honestly, outside of what was assigned to me in like high school. And it was it was so interesting when Wells chose to put in a human perspective and talking about the mathematician. It also, there's this really tiny section where like three other characters are mentioned. Um a there's these like society women, pretty women flushed and glittering, uh, say, "Oh, how curious! Oh, ho, ho! I don't know anything about anything." And then you have what he calls lonely tramps faring through the wintry night, who are disappointed that this star is not giving off more heat. And then you have, for me, one of the most impactful characters is an unnamed woman, and it says, "What is a new star to me?" cried the weeping woman kneeling beside her dead. And
Oh my
and
God,
it's
yes.
so weird because it does the same thing there too that it does when it introduces the mathematician. It's like it goes from like enormous scope of, like you said, a newspaper reporting of here's what's happening, the star is getting closer, here's what's happening, and then all of a sudden we zoom in on these little perspectives on Earth. And
Yes.
even before we get to the mathematician, and then when we get to the mathematician, he has all sorts of dialogue. And it just is, it's whiplash a little bit, but it works for me at least.
I totally underlined those sections that you just read 100%. And I think that that really defied the expect. So
Mm,
interestingly, in the introduction to this particular story, um, the editors credit this story, The Star, for the birth of a micro genre,
mhm,
the impact story. Right. So we've had these movies, we've seen all these movies like the meteor is coming to Earth. And so this is like this whole subgenre of sci-fi, but in all those, it's like whatever the asteroid or whatever is discovered, and people start freaking out into massive pandemonium. All is lost, and I like clocked the specificity and banality of these details. And I just
mm,
thought that that was so cool. Just like at a party, I'm like, I don't know, like whatever. Oh man, the star is not making me warm and I'm cold. Similarly, this woman kneeling. I mean, just to go from like the banality of like party talk to like someone who's cold in the fire to like someone
mm,
mourning their son or whoever. Um, just none of these people care about this star, which is about to ruin everything, because they have more pressing, like very human
mm,
things at hand, you know. And yeah, I thought that was really like a grace note.
mm.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
It's very, very, and it's very, it feels very masterfully done and very purposeful.
We have some good comments here. Coyote
Yes.
says the story almost felt like it was going through the stages of grief and death.
Hmm.
Now, Coyote, that sounds very profound, but I want can you explain that just a little bit more? What would be the stage of grief and what would be the stage of death metaphorically or in the story? I'm
Yeah.
curious. I want to know more there. Takashi says it pulls you out of it at first to set the stage, then pulls you in with the mathematician
Hmm.
and pull you out again to see the inevitable doom. I think, yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just
It's,
the, yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Oh, no, it's
but
fine.
yes.
It's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, just, yeah, just like, I love thinking about cinematography, you know, and like where
Mm,
the camera goes and where the POV is. And just this story fluidly sort of goes from this like almost newspaper journalistic report to the tighter POV on the mathematician back. And then we get these like close-ups of these like three people, you know, the
mm,
ladies like gossiping and like the tramp who's cold and the woman at the grave, just like these like close-ups, and then pulls back. And I think like formally that was probably pretty significant for like 100 some years ago to kind of like shift around like that.
yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, absolutely. And Asa, I appreciate too. So Asa's background, and correct me if I'm wrong, your background is as a playwright. Is
Yeah,
that
that
correct?
is
So you
true.
kind of are coming at this from a visual medium. Meanwhile, I've never written anything. That's not true. I started off as a prose writer and a poetry writer, and so I'm coming at this also from like a word perspective and a word use perspective. And so when you said like you see the camera coming in, that is literally something I had not thought about, and I really appreciate your perspective in that.
Wow,
So
that's like mind blowing. I think I only in the sense of like I take it so for granted that it's yeah, that's so interesting. But in it, yeah, that's incredible. I love the way that everyone has different instincts around like engaging with a story. Um, yes, yes, yes. What else, Sarah, caught your eye in this
yeah,
piece?
well, um, oh, there we go. Okay, I had used my AirPods case as a bookmark, which do not do that. It's a terrible idea. It will slip out and make a loud noise. I noticed a lot of just very interesting small things. So we talked a little bit about that relativity of like your perspective, where you physically are in this case, determining how you see the star. There's a lot of interesting things about it taking place on like New Year's Eve and having you think about like, oh, it's the new year, it's winter, there's a new star in the sky, and it's like, is it setting up for like a Christmas metaphor? Is it setting us up for, what even is that? So I just noticed and just underlined throughout a lot of these little I don't know what to call them, just little metaphors, little allusions here that may or may not be intentional. And I feel like with a writer like H.G. Wells, it is intentional.
Yeah, do you have one that you can share?
Yeah,
You're
let's
looking at?
see. Um, I have in the margin here just the word cocaine because it talks about the mathematician doing some cocaine at some point. Yeah, one of the things, sorry, you're getting ADHD, Sarah. Um, One of the things I did notice is that you can't see it because the print is so tiny, but at times it goes from third person into second person, which
Oh, really?
blew my mind. Yeah, so I'm here at the top of page 5, and basically it's H.G. Wells talking to us. And he says, "But you must not imagine, because I have spoken of people praying through the night and people going aboard ships and people fleeing through mountainous country, that the whole world was already in terror because of the star." And then he says, as a matter of fact, nobody was really noticing it at this point. But I thought that was interesting too, that we get a few point of view changes from a you and an I, especially in a story, maybe not as much in the story from this era. So like, in the Victorian era, narrators would address their readers all the time, like, "Oh, dear reader," that kind of stuff. And it really like popped out at me too. Just, oh, is this an intentional like literary device? What's going on here? Um, yeah, so that was one of just a lot of small masterful strokes here that left me with, I think, some more questions than answers.
I love that. I want to talk about the very end in context of what you just said, but Coyote
Yes.
here has expanded on what they
Mm.
said before. Okay, Coyote Raven says, and this is just if you're just tuning in earlier, Coyote Raven said the story in regards to H.G. Wells' The Star, the story almost felt like it was going through the stages of grief and death. I asked Coyote to expand, and here we have it. I mean that society was in denial, went through bargaining with God, and had to work its way to acceptance of the possibility of destruction, death. Then, when saved, they feel relief, joy, oneness. I'm with that. I am with this interpretation. You know, yes, and I guess maybe that's kind of why it sort of gives me some goosebumps today about climate change and like, da da da. It's like, we're this stage of grieving. There's that famous learning how to die in the
Mm.
anthropomorphine, which is, have you heard of this book, Sarah?
I have not, but please tell me more.
Yeah, it's this nonfiction book, and the writer sort of asserts that, look, it's over. So the task at hand is to learn how to die, to learn how to grieve. It's like we're past the point, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with this thesis,
Right.
but the thesis of this book is like, look, it can't be saved. Like what is going to happen is terrible and total. And so as people, what we need to do is like learn how to grieve. And I think that line of thinking is in line here with what Coyote is saying, that like there's the acknowledgement of the star. We start to see the star's destruction. The star's destruction is relatively total. And then the relief comes from that historical perspective. Like with distance, they can say that it's not so bad, which I think a cynic like me might say, or a sometimes cynic, a part-time cynic curious, would say that perhaps the joy oneness is actually denial, that in fact, the scientists on Mars are like revisionist history here. It wasn't that bad because we're here on Mars. We survived. Through the end, though, to your point, Sarah, about how we shift into the second person a little bit, I felt surprised when at the end, when all of a sudden we learned that this is far enough into the future that there are folks living on Mars. I don't want to say that I felt duped or anything like that, but it definitely like made me question kind of the orientation of the story, who is telling it, to whom, when. And I just wonder, maybe it's okay that kind of wasn't set up earlier, or maybe it's fine that it just toggles between these different first person, second person, or third person, second person rather. I don't know, but it did like surprise me. And I wonder if you had any feeling about that particular effect of the end, where it's like zoomed out and that was revealed.
Yes, absolutely. And Coyote says, I could see that cynical take. H.G. Wells himself was a huge cynic. He was a futurist, so he was always thinking about the future, but he also, I think, considered himself very cynical. So I think that's right in line with what you were saying.
Just
but
quick hit,
hit,
just to follow up on HG. One thing the intro said was, well, the work we read him for today is sci-fi, but basically he became sufficiently jaded post World War I that he stopped writing science fiction, and after that was just writing realist novels, and which we don't read anymore. So yes, there is cynicism in the mix. Let's look at Takashi's comment. I believe that Sarah said about the change of second person was to emphasize this story as something that happened on an alternative Earth's timeline. We, the reader, are witnesses of that catastrophe.
Yeah,
I can see
that's
that.
Very interesting. That's definitely one way to read this. Absolutely. Another way to read it is, and this maybe I'm less convinced of, is that the whole time you're supposed to be seeing this through the Martian astronomers' eyes.
Oh.
And that, I don't know. So the way that the point of view switches at the end is, it says, I'm paraphrasing, but haha, this whole time our perspective has been from the people of Mars. We don't really care, lol. And I don't know, that just is, because I'm that person, I immediately think, oh, how did they pick up like what the grieving woman was saying? And like, how did they pick up what the mathematician was saying to his class? And so it's like, so you raising that, like, what is this doing here? Is absolutely a very good question. And it was interesting because I expected there to be a twist. I'd not read the story before, but I heard about this story. I knew there was a twist ending. And when it came, I was like, well, that's not so much a twist ending as it is so much we're just going to shift the perspective and tell you there's Martians because reasons. I don't know. Asa, what are some more of your thoughts? I mean, on this point of view switch.
Yeah, I think that's all really interesting. I think it's one of those things that could be kind of just a matter of taste, that some people feel more comfortable when established narrative rules are just broken, like the rules, like to your kind of stickler instinct, like how did these Martians be able to see what happened? I think that, and I think that this becomes a very relevant question in sci-fi because, some people have like higher tolerance for others than breaking the rules of science, keeping it grounded in real science versus like, I want to set this thing in another solar system. I don't care how we're going to get there, da, 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 da. But I think the potential violation that's happening here is actually different. And it's more like literary in its nature, that the rules being broken aren't so much about like, how do these scientists know, but it's more about like, H.G. Wells feels like he can play fast and loose with the perspective,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, I
And
absolutely like that. Yeah.
I only felt it a little bit. So I think generally like this story had an emotional impact for me. So I think I'm like, okay, sure, like whatever, anything can be forgiven if I feel something, So I'm kind of that mind. But it's affirming to know that you kind of like clocked it too.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too was very interesting. One of the tenets as you go along in writer circles, or if you're already deep in the writing trenches, you'll hear this very famous phrase of show, don't tell. And basically what that means is like, don't come out and like say the point of your story. You should show it through the characters' emotions and their actions and how they choose to respond to and instigate things. And it really, there's a moral to the story, literally in the last sentence.
Right.
Like, it's very interesting. So H.G. Wells goes from, here's all the things, people came together, there's no more volcanoes going off, hooray. The Martians are there and they're very different from us, and they don't really care so much because they don't have the granular perspective of Earth that we do. And then the very last sentence says, and all this only shows how small the vastest of human catastrophes may seem at a distance of a few million miles. What do you think about that last sentence? What do you think about it, maybe even not from a showing telling perspective, but just how did that hit you?
I mean, I can hang with like a super like ballsy, like bold, like last sentence in this way where, if you've earned a kind of declarative sentence like that, or at least you even like think you've earned it, like I'm kind of okay with that. Like I'm not like against that on principle. I think like some stories end in these like little like tiny like whispers that wreck you, and this one hits you harder. But I think it's kind of like for this story, I think it works. It kind of goes back to the kind of like newspaper, like these are the facts of the story opens with, and it kind of just like I feel like the story has set itself up as the kind of story that could end like this, if that makes sense. So that's what I think about it, and it was also one of those things where it's like I was still catching up to it in the sense that it's not like I was like, okay, now the writer is going into the moment that they're tying up the bow. The ending, like as you pointed out, comes very dramatically and aggressively. It's like story, it's over. And I think that similarly, even within that small last couple of paragraphs of the ending, I'm still pummeling forward. And by the time I finish that sentence, I don't really fully know that we're at the end even, so I thought it worked for me.
So you're like the star that like goes hurtling past the earth, and then you're like, wait a second, that was the ending.
So I was still reading the blank page, just waiting for more.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what an interesting technique for that as well, to end it so abruptly, to end it in such a different like frame of mind. And I know he's playing with perspective here. I mean, that's the whole theme of this story, as he openly states in that very last sentence is, hey, perspective, here's what things look like from different angles. And so I know that he's playing with that throughout the whole story. And I guess, it is arguable, like Asa, to your point, that it is more effective that way, to very like bluntly and abruptly say, hey, the Martians don't care. Hey, here's the moral of the story, the end. Like it is effective.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think a lot
Ooh.
of
We got some, sorry.
Yes. What do we got? The Star was published in the 1890s, and the phrase show didn't really start until the 1920s. Yeah, H.G. Wells, he was like, I don't need that.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to write what I'm going to write.
It makes me think of this is not Ursula Le Guin was the last like Instagram post that I saw that gave this particular advice of, you draft a short story or something, and you just, the process of revision often starts with like, you just chop off the first 3 sentences, or the paragraph. And it's like, okay, that's when it actually starts, Hemingway, who knows, apocryphal or not, but like he would write until he got to one true sentence what he considered
Mm.
like my first true sentence, and then chopped everything above it. And where I'm going with all this is like, I wonder if there's similar wisdom around endings. Like I wonder
Mm.
if there was another paragraph that was cut, and that like per the screenwriting idea, like late in, early out. Have you run
Yeah.
across that little tip? Yeah, exactly. So like the idea is like you start as late into the scene as you can, and you get out as early as you can to keep us just locked in and not thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
More comments.
Very
Laura
good
in the
comments.
mix. It's a bit like the distance between societal levels of rich and poor on earth. The rich stand above the poor, observing their lives and endings with some indifference.
Mm.
I hear that. Yeah.
That's so
And
good. That's so
presumably
good.
it's the rich who survived
Yeah.
this catastrophe.
And the Martians, either the rich having survived or the Martians standing in for, the uber wealthy, oh, they're different,
Right.
they're just different people altogether, with their perspectives. And then, yes, I was hoping you would highlight this comment as well from Takashi.
Takashi, perhaps the abrupt ending has more to do with the theme than the story itself. Gosh, I mean, it is amazing being on a book club with folks from all over the world. The only dagger is that I'm just like, I just want to like look at you right now, Takashi, and be like, okay, yeah. So tell me more, tell me more, tell me more.
Well, it does.
Yes, because you go ahead, Sarah.
That's kind of what we were talking about. It's H.G. Wells playing with these perspectives, and it's like perspective is the point. And then what does that tell us? So like taking it a step further, like, and I really think that Lore Huntress, in their comments, like ended up speaking about that too. Like, what does the perspective mean? What does this do for us? What does it say about the world? What is the story like saying through uses of? Because the end in itself is not just playing with perspectives is fun. There's a reason that H.G. Wells is doing that. And I think that this is a really good and insightful one takeaway that you could come away with about why H.G. Wells is playing with these perspectives, why he ends it so abruptly, and how he leaves us feeling with that. So I don't know. I love this. I'm very excited right now.
Same. Let's see. I want to say those are the things that stuck out to me
Yeah.
most. Was there anything else that you feel like is a must hit here on this story?
Yeah. Okay. And this is maybe neither here nor there. Yes, the Martians are indifferent, like the rich viewing the struggles of the poor. I think that is, and I think that really sets us up for what we're going to be continuing to talk about as we watch the evolution of sci-fi is this tackling of social justice and social issues and class issues and all of these things. Yes, human nature hasn't changed, narrative vault. That is so legit. Oh, that's so legit. I love it. I was going to say one other thing that is completely unrelated, but I need to say it. Has anyone seen The Wandering Land or read the piece?
Ooh, I
It's
haven't. What's that?
okay, I haven't read it. I've only seen the movie, and it's I want to say it came out in China just a few years ago, or maybe I'm like dating myself. Maybe it's been out forever, but it's this reminded me so much. And I was hoping at the end of this short story that they were going to like lasso a planet and like ride it. And anyway, you have to see the movie. I'd encourage, I'd encourage maybe someone comparing and contrasting this H.G. Wells story with, and again, I haven't read the text for The Wandering Earth, but the movie is a real treat. And so just looking at how we solve problems and how they hone in on who's solving what problems. Okay. Tangent over.
I love that. Well, I think that should we wrap this up and tell people about what's next?
I think so. I mean, do we want to keep this probably at an hour?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
I think other days, maybe who knows? But I've sort of said my like kind of things that I think to say.
Perfect.
Does anyone else have? Human nature hasn't
Yeah.
changed; its circumstances have, says
Yeah.
Takashi.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It's like so much is the same, but we're in a little bit of a different puzzle. Same, yeah, same
Yeah.
milieu, but different variables. Definitely. So if you want more soon,
Yes.
it's available to you tomorrow. Uh,
Tomorrow.
yes, yes, tomorrow. Stephen King is the first writer in tomorrow's story club. The story of the week is The Reach by Stephen King. It's in this collection. It's probably in some other of his collections. You may be able to find it somewhere. We're meeting the same time.
Mhm.
And then on Friday, I mean, so much of this for Sarah and I is to improve our own writing and to give ourselves inspiration and to push ourselves to create. And so part of the spec fic circle is to actually write speculative fiction ourselves. And so on Friday, after tomorrow's horror story club, that we'll do a flash fiction on the spot, right together. Afternoon. So that's a few hours earlier, 2 hours earlier than this one, depending on where you are in the world. We provide a prompt. This time it's about space. There's a publication that you can submit to. It's cool. We bring all those details and just really together try to get across the finish line in terms of finishing something that you can be proud of and maybe submit. A few other comments. Coyote Raven, I like your take on it, Lore Huntress. I saw the ending as a look how insignificant we are in the grand scale of the universe.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes. I'm
Mhm.
scrolling back to this comment from Takashi. This feels like the stepping stones of cosmic horror. Yeah, this is like really rich stuff. How small we are as a source
Mhm.
of horror, or how small we are as a source of lightness and liberation, like recognizing how small we are can like make us feel good, or it could like keep us up at night.
Yeah.
And Kaido Raven specks on the speck of the pale blue dot.
I love it.
Lovely, Laura Huntress. Yes, exactly that. Yes, if you want to keep the conversation going on these two stories, I'm sure folks will have some things to say. Some people weren't here, so they're on the Discord. That's in the video description. These are your two books. If you want to go find them or order them, these are them.
You don't have to, because you can often find the stories in other
Yes.
places, but yes. We have The
Yes,
Dark
a
Descent.
lot of these stories are old, so you can track them down. Dark Descent, edited by David G. Hartwell, and this is the big book of science fiction. Questions from anyone here in the mix? Anything that I forgot to announce here, Sarah?
I don't think so. You did such a wonderful job of this. Yeah, this was really, if you're joining us, you're here for our very first inaugural, what do we call this? Podcast episode, video episode, whatever we're
Story
calling
Club.
it. Story Club.
Sci-Fi Story Club.
Yeah, yeah. You're here with us for the very first instance of Sci-Fi Story Club and Speculative Fiction Story Club. We're very grateful that you've been here today. Yeah, like Asa said, please do join our Discord. Join us tomorrow, same time, same place, for our discussion of Stephen King's The Reach, which I already have thoughts about, but we'll not get into that now. I know.
About it. So good and so beautiful. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yes.
One
Read the
thing,
story, y'all. Read the
yes.
story and come back
Yes.
tomorrow.
And one thing I would also like to say is, come whenever you can. You don't always have to be at these live. You won't lose credit or anything. We're treating this a little bit like a class or a course, but you're not going to get, a failing grade if you don't show up. So just please come when you can. Both of these videos will be available on both of our YouTubes if you want to watch it after the fact and leave us your thoughts in the comments on those videos, or if you'd like to comment in the Discord.
Yes, just the very final thoughts here. Narrative Vault. Thanks, Lore Huntress, for this great point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And Takashi raises a great question that we can use moving forward throughout. How important is scientific accuracy in science fiction? Using the stars as an example. To HG, it seems somewhat important. To others, maybe less so. We're going to find out. All right, party people, it's been good. We're going to end the stream.
Yes. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. We're so grateful, and we're really looking forward to doing more of these. So join us when you can. We'll be here.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye for now.